Hi all! Everything in my video is pulled from the public domain, and I am using them under the Fair Use, Fair Dealings guidelines. Everything I say is my own opinion. You should look into this information for yourselves, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. Good morning, everybody. This is going to be one of my longer videos. It's all about the Netflix deal and now the never heard about anymore Spotify deal. So stay with me. Let's go. So Harry and Meghan signed their deal with Netflix in September of 2020, and they put out this announcement. We're going to be doing shows that uplift and, teach, and it's just going to be this fabulous thing. Now, we know the deal, what it could be worth, but we're also smart, and I'm sure Netflix is smart enough to realize that you don't hand people $100 million. They've been giving them a few million at a time to produce the shows. And 8 months later, in April of the following year, they finally announced their first series is going to be about the Invictus Games, which is the idea that Harry stole from the Warrior Games from the United States. So he's basically going to be making money off of the back of the wounded warriors. With that said, I did a video April 7th called Invictus Games Sellout. I also did a video on April 15th about Cheryl Underwood hypocrisy and an update on the Invictus Game. Then I did a video called The Vanity Plagiarized Project. You guys should go back and take a look at those if there's anything that you don't understand or you want to just see the timeline from beginning to end of what's going on. In January of this year, I did a deal called Megxit Coming and Netflix Going because there were some rumors that Netflix was getting upset that they had not come up with anything yet, and all the projects that they were pitching were vanity projects for Meghan, and they were being turned down right and left. All right, in July, we announced the Pearl, which is a copycat again, plagiarized idea. It's already in book, it's everywhere, but it's a vanity project for Meghan because Pearl is her name in another language, something like that. But that's all we've heard. And in the meantime, nothing's been produced, and it's been over a year since they announced their partnership. It did not take long for people to realize that the reason nothing was coming out is because these two have absolutely no experience in doing this kind of work, none. And I think Netflix realized that as well, and things started to get a little bit ugly. So what ended up happening? They hired a bunch of staff. We've seen this. They hired somebody for the head of content for Archewell. They hired somebody who's the head of scripted TV for Archewell. They hired somebody who's supposed to be in charge of just the Netflix stuff. Still, nothing's come out, although we're hearing it's in production. And now Harry is getting slammed for signing the agreement in the first place. And there's multiple reasons for that. One of the shows from Netflix is The Crown, which is wreaking havoc on Harry's father. And it's a show that Harry admitted that he and Meghan watch while he was on his rooftop bus interview with James Corden. He apparently has no objection to his father being put through the ringer with this show. Second is Diana the musical that makes his mother look like a complete cow. And the whole world is up in arms. It's a horrible musical. Everybody's panned it. And Harry has not come out and said one word, although he's been very vocal through the years about the way people use his mother to make money and portray her. But he has no issue with this. The hypocrisy is just astounding. By the way, one of the things in the Diana musical that it says is that Diana used the HIV patients for publicity only, that she really didn't care about them. That's just an example of what I'm talking about. So in Harry's defending the crown, you have to wonder why he's doing that and not saying anything about the Diana musical. One of the articles said this is going to come back to haunt Harry and bite him in the rear because, for instance, when he said in the Oprah interview that we did the deals because we were desperate for money, that would have horrified the executives at Netflix because you want to sign people who are really keen to make programs and not just doing it for a bit of cash, which is essentially why Harry and Meghan did it. Here's my personal opinion. Harry made some unimpressive comments that they signed the deal with Netflix because they needed money. They were under pressure. I think Netflix is very unhappy with them, which is why the following article came out threatening that Harry and Meghan were going to leave, when I think actually what happened was Harry and Meghan got threatened to be axed because they weren't producing anything, they weren't doing anything. So in my opinion, they did the only thing that they had to sell, which is their royal connection. They went on tours. Harry was wired for all of his meetings. As a matter of fact, there's a rumor out that they were thrown out of the UN building when it was found that they were taping. They had the Netflix documentary people following them around with the cameras. And so there's going to be a documentary because in the end, I believe that's why Netflix brought them on in the first place, for the royal connection, which, by the way, has now almost completely been severed. Now we're in the waiting game. Let's see what they're going to produce, if anything, and if anybody's going to watch it. I myself have vowed not to watch Netflix. We no longer have Netflix. I will not pay for Netflix. And I think it'll be interesting to see what comes out. Okay, moving on. Spotify. Yes, Spotify. You guys remember them, the streaming network. I did a video 9 months ago called Not Spot on Spotify that talked about the deal that Spotify made with these two to do podcasts. And in that same month, I also did one called An Extension and Spotify Update. You guys should go back and watch those. You all remember that in December of 2020, right after they signed the Netflix deal, they signed the Spotify deal that was supposedly worth $35 million. And again, we're going to stream content and we're going to do this and that. And how many times did I tell you guys, everybody was asking about Archie, and I said, they'll will Archie out when it brings them clicks, when it can help them financially. Just like they teased at the Oprah interview with a short little clip of him to try to get people to watch, okay? The people who stream on Spotify were up in arms. They're not making any amount of money, and Spotify had to defend giving two people who have never done podcasts, who know nothing about it, that kind of money. There was another video I did called Bye Bye Spotify, Double-Decker Buses and More that I did 8 months ago that you might want to go back and look if you want to catch up. They put out a lot of hoopla. They finally put out their podcast, which, by the way, was just a bunch of multimillionaires who had taped something from their mansions, telling us all how we're all in it together when obviously we're not. And they got their son, supposedly, allegedly, to say Merry Christmas or something like that. I think they thought that that would help bring in the clicks, but actually it came in behind sleep sounds for whales, or, sleep sounds by whales. Then you heard nothing else for a while, and people were wondering what was the deal. Why haven't they done another podcast? What's going on? Then this came out.
Sure that we can elevate voices that maybe aren't being heard and hear people's stories.
And the biggest part of this is trying to create this community of where you can share. We'll encourage everybody else to then share their own vulnerabilities within that safe space.
This was an ad to try to get people to tune in for their podcast, and they lumped them in the ad with Michelle Obama and a bunch of other famous people, hoping people would tune in. But then they didn't do another podcast. Now, again, 5 months ago, I did a video called Spotify Take 4. And in July, they hired somebody to be the head of audio to run the Spotify podcasts, of which there's been none since then. In December, it will be a full year since we've had a podcast from them. And here's what I think is happening. First of all, the young lady above has a Twitter account and her tweets are protected. So if you're working for Archewell, which is what it says on the banner of her account, why wouldn't you let people see your tweets? Why won't you tweet about what wonderful things are happening? Then this article came out in July, and it basically addresses what happened to it. Well, here's what's so interesting about it. It makes the excuse that the Spotify announcement says that they're going to release their first offering, not their first episode. So they never said when their first 2021 thing would drop. It says that it was revving up in July of 2021 for its grand debut. They even hired, the young lady from before as head of audio, and she was going to join the team in August with an impressive resume. And the hire signals that our new content is coming, and it's going to be high quality. It also does say that there are some problems with requests that they've made for audio and foundation, and making clear the nature of the live stage performances that Archwell Audio could hold, because it says podcasts, audio programs, music, and audio books, and they want to trademark them. And they have until December 25th, Christmas Day, to make the adjustments. Beginning to wonder if that's what it is or if my other thought process is right. My thought process is that they were terminated from Spotify because they didn't deliver, and the one podcast that they put up, quite frankly, sucked. But, of course, when they hire them, they make a big fanfare and announcement, but when you're terminated, it's quiet behind the scenes. So I have a sneaking suspicion that very, very well be what happened. So what do you guys think happened to Spotify? Do you think that Harry and Meghan were quietly terminated and they just, nothing was said? Because that's usually the way it's done. And what do you think is happening with Netflix? I don't think it's going to matter what they put out. I wouldn't watch it anyway, but if they don't produce something that people want to watch, it's over. Don't forget to leave your comments below. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter. Don't forget about my email address. You can email me. I may not respond to every email, but I read every email. And don't forget about that coffee fund. And as always, you guys have a great day.